Blue and red strobes washed over my hydrangeas, while a 14-year-old in basketball shorts screamed into his phone with Oscar-level urgency. He has barricaded himself. The kid shouted what sounded like a deeply unimpressed dispatcher on speaker. The barricade, of course, was a 6-foot cedar privacy gate I had locked. My gate, my lock on my property, because apparently I prefer my yard not doubling as a neighborhood shortcut and hangout zone. The responding officer glanced once, slid the latch open, clicked it twice like he was testing a cheap pen, then turned to the kid with the kind of tired patience only veteran officers seem to master. "Son," he said flatly, "this is literally how gates work." The kid tried to protest, but the officer raised a hand and asked to speak with the property owner. "That's me," I said, already standing on my porch with coffee in hand, watching this circus play out across my lawn. Let me rewind a bit. I'm Arthur Mitchell, quiet data analyst by profession, weekend woodworker on Saturdays, and a loud coffee drinker at levels my neighbors probably consider questionable. I moved into Whispering Pines for 2 main reasons: the tall trees and the promise of what the brochure called peaceful, discreet community living. Instead, I ended up with Brenda Kensington. Brenda is the HOA president, a woman who wears visors like combat helmets and uses her clipboard like it grants legal authority. She has strong opinions about mailbox height, trash bin placement, and even which shade of beige is community approved. Her teenage son Tyler runs a small biker crowd of middle schoolers who treat our cul-de-sac like a BMX training park. Bikes everywhere, shortcut lines carved through every lawn in sight. They use my side yard as a personal shortcut multiple times a day, crushing flower beds and leaving tire tracks stamped into the grass. So I did what any reasonable homeowner would do. I installed a solid cedar side gate to stop the neighborhood from using my yard as a public corridor. I matched it to the fence, used heavy-duty hardware, and stained it to blend with the house. Brenda called it hostile architecture. I called it gate. Then the note started. Small printed cards appeared on my door handle, complete with official-looking HOA letterhead. Gates discourage community flow, one read, as if my yard was supposed to function like a sidewalk. Then came the fines. Unneighborly access reduction, $50. Visual obstinacy, $75. Unauthorized latch, $100. I wish I was making this up. Each citation came with Brenda's looping signature and an aggressively highlighted payment deadline. She even leaned into my open garage one afternoon to lecture me about porous yards and neighborhood connectivity, using terms like circulation patterns and pedestrian easements with the confidence of someone who watched exactly one urban planning documentary. Then she escalated it online on the neighborhood forum, posting with the subtlety of a foghorn. Some people had decided to lock their gates, she wrote, followed by a loaded pause. Opinions varied, but Brenda only screenshotted the supportive comments, printed them, and left them on my windshield like official parking violations. Meanwhile, Tyler started treating my latch like a puzzle game, yanking and shaking it every chance he got. I eventually noticed tally marks scratched into the wood. 14 marks. 14 attempts to defeat my lock gate. Brenda herself showed up one afternoon with a yardstick, measuring the gate with dramatic precision before declaring it was 1 inch to freedom negative. When I asked what that meant, she said I'd understand when the fine arrived. I emailed her the architectural approval I had received before installation, complete with photos from 3 angles. She replied almost instantly, "Approvals can be spiritually revoked." I read that sentence 5 times, looking for sarcasm. There was none. Saturday afternoon, everything blew up. The kids came racing down the hill on their bikes, heading straight from my side yard like it was a racetrack. I was in the garage organizing tools when I heard a sudden skid. The gate was shut. Tyler stopped short, saw the lock, and reacted like he'd hit an invisible wall. He rattled the gate, got frustrated, then pulled out his phone and dialed 911 to report what he called illegal blocking of a public passageway. I could hear every word. "Yes, it's an emergency," he insisted. "He won't let us through." The dispatcher asked, "Through what?" "Through his gate," Tyler said, as if that explained everything. Moments later, Brenda arrived out of breath, pointing dramatically and waving a wrinkled photocopy she claimed showed a walking path from 1998, a path that never actually existed. She insisted my gate had taken community land and that my yard was technically an easement. She tapped the paper like it was a forgotten legal relic. The officer asked for proof of the easement. Brenda said she had community memory and historical precedent. The officer looked at me. I shrugged. Then Brenda slipped up badly. She admitted, right in front of him, that she had tested the lock 3 separate times that week to confirm obstruction, which explained the fresh scratches around the latch I had been wondering about. The officer asked whether she had attempted to open a lock gate on someone else's property. Brenda didn't hesitate. She insisted it wasn't someone else's property at all. It was community adjacent. Those were her exact words. Community adjacent. I'm a private man, but I'm not defenseless. I excused myself, walked calmly into my office, and came back with receipts. Not metaphorical receipts. Actual physical proof. The recorded plat map showing my property boundaries in crisp black ink, stamped and signed by the county recorder. My survey documents with corner pins still in place, done just 8 months earlier when I bought the house. The HOA bylaws highlighted in yellow, with a section clearly stating owners may install and secure fencing within their property lines. And the ARC approval form, stamped in red with the word approved, bearing none other than Brenda's signature dated 6 weeks prior. The patrol sergeant immediately radioed county zoning, while Brenda stood there insisting they consult historical maps. Zoning responded within minutes. No easement on Lot 42. Property lines confirmed as recorded. Then I opened my Ring camera app. The officer leaned in to watch. There was Brenda 3 days earlier, lifting my latch with a butter knife, carefully testing the locking mechanism. 2 days earlier, Tyler yanking the gate so hard the hinges groaned and the fence shook. And then, in sharp HD from the day before, Brenda whispering to her son while pointing at my gate like they were planning a science experiment. The officer asked me to turn up the volume. It breaks. Brenda said clearly from the footage, "It's loose. We just found it like that." The officer's eyebrows practically tried to leave his face. He asked Brenda if she wanted to revise her statement. Brenda immediately claimed the camera angle was misleading. 2 weeks later, Whispering Pines called a special HOA meeting in the clubhouse. Half the neighborhood showed up for the drama. The other half showed up for the Costco cookie trays, stacked like a diplomatic offering. I had formally requested a meeting, submitted an agenda in writing, and prepared a full presentation. Brenda tried to block it, but the board treasurer reminded her that any homeowner could call a special session under the bylaws. She arrived in her sharpest power visor, like it was court. I presented my case using the clubhouse projector. Slides on the community wall. Slide 1. The plat map, clearly showing the walking path Brenda kept referencing label proposed, abandoned 1998, with a note, never constructed, removed from Plan 1999. Slide 2. HOA Bylaws Clause 7.3 stating gates are permitted and locks are allowed at owner discretion for security. Slide 3. The Ring footage compilation, Brenda coaching Tyler, repeated attempts to force a latch, all cut into a tight 2-minute sequence that played way too loudly in a silent room. Slide 4. A letter from the county council politely, but firmly explaining that calling 911 over a locked private gate is not an emergency, and repeated interference with a locked property entry may constitute trespass-related conduct. I had requested that letter after the incident. The county responded faster than I expected. Slide 5. An itemized list of every fine Brenda had issued, totaling $475, along with my formal request for reimbursement and a written apology. The HOA attorney, who had been quiet in the corner the entire time, finally spoke up. He started using words like tortious interference, harassment, and abuse of authority. Then he explained that the HOA could face liability for penalizing a homeowner for exercising lawful property rights. The vote to rescind my fines passed unanimously, 7-0. Brenda abstained, claiming bias. Then came the part nobody expected. A motion was introduced to censure Brenda for encouraging minors to trespass and to remove her privileges, access to the common shed, her reserved parking space, and her monthly stipend. Brenda stood up, face pale, visor slightly tilted. "But the shed is my office," she protested. The treasurer didn't even look up. It stores folding chairs, Brenda. The motion passed 6-1. Only her closest ally voted against it. That night, Brenda lost the presidency, and she gained something else, a civil injunction. After reviewing the evidence, the judge noted a pattern of escalating interference and ordered that Brenda and Tyler must remain at least 5 feet away from my fence unless explicitly invited. The filing fee alone cost her $300. The HOA issued a formal respect the gate policy, complete with diagrams. My latch became the official example in the updated community handbook distributed to every resident. Tyler now bikes the long way around the cul-de-sac, adding 2 extra minutes per loop. As part of his court-ordered community service, he spends weekends repainting the very fences he and his friends had tested and damaged. Brenda sits in a folding chair at meetings now, silent, as the board collects her keys, her parking placard, and her clipboard. Her visor still sits on her head, but a little lower every time I see her, as she stares at the Costco cookie tray she's no longer in charge of.